Think for a second. Just about the sheer chemical improbability of a living cell.
Oh, yeah. It's staggering.
Right, because you have these incredibly delicate molecular structures. I mean, we were talking amino acids, RNA precursors, really complex proteins that require a ridiculously specific set of conditions to even form.
Absolutely.
And yet astrobiologists are just constantly staring out into the freezing, highly irradiated, totally chaotic vacuum of space, trying to figure out how the fragile ingredients of life could possibly survive out there, let alone, travel between star systems.
Which is basically the ultimate cold case.
Exactly. And we are stepping into that exact mystery for today's deep dive. Welcome. Our mission today is to unpack a new, frankly audacious framework published on Zenodo on April 22nd, 2026. It's by Dr. Melvin Sewell, and it attempts to rewrite our entire understanding of how life's ingredients are delivered across the cosmos. It basically argues we are the final stop on a meticulously structured multiversal supply chain.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating premise, really, because this paper doesn't just iterate on standard astrobiology. We aren't talking about the usual theories of, fossilized microbes hitching a ride on a comet.
Right, the classic panspermia idea.
Right. But the framework we are exploring Sewell's paper is titled Courier-Bodies and the Delivery of Life's First Ingredients, an Echo Rift XL sovereign diagnostic on cosmological panspermia.
Which is quite the title.
It is, and it's an attempt to map out what Sewell terms a structured multiversal interaction system. So we are operating firmly at the intersection of theoretical cosmology and molecular biology here, looking at the underlying architecture of how entire universes might actually interact to synthesize and transport and, well, anchor the building blocks of life.
And to be honest, as a bit of a scientific skeptic, my immediate reaction to reading this paper was just total whiplash.
I can imagine, yeah.
Because the terminology Sewell uses, it borders on the cinematic. You have rift forges, Courier-Bodies, the sovereign seed blueprint, and an Echo Rift XL diagnostic.
It's very evocative.
It sounds majestic, right? Almost like a mythic narrative instead of a science paper. So the core tension for this deep dive is really figuring out how Dr. Sewell bridges this massive poetic terminology with actual strict scholarly rigor. Like, how do we get from a mythic, multiversal theory to empirical astrobiology without just, losing the math along the way?
Well, what's fascinating here is that tension is exactly where the value of this paper lies. The terminology might sound mythic, sure, but the goal is to resolve a very real mechanical problem in cosmology.
Which is what exactly?
Well, how do you preserve the extreme complexity of pre-biological information across vast multiversal distances without it just succumbing to cosmic entropy? How does it survive the trip?
Okay, but before we dig into how you beat entropy, let's talk about the architect of this blueprint, because Dr. Melvin Sewell's background...
Oh, unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional is a good word for it, to say the least. So he is the academic dean at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies Nights, but he's also the publisher of Babe magazine and the CEO of True Flow Productions and Consulting, LLC. So I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
Is this just an instance of a media producer trying to write theoretical physics?
Yeah.
Does an interdisciplinary, almost entrepreneurial background actually lend itself to formulating a sovereign seed blueprint, or is it just someone generating really flashy vocabulary?
I get the skepticism. It's easy to look at an eclectic CV and assume a lack of focus. But when you are trying to conceptualize a system as vast as the sovereign seed blueprint, hyperspecialization is actually kind of a liability.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, think about it. Traditional astrobiologists spend their entire careers looking through microscopes at, isotopic ratios in meteorites. And traditional theoretical cosmologists spend their careers looking at mathematical models of the void.
They stay in their lanes.
Exactly. But Sewell is attempting to map the logistical system that connects the two, to integrate SH1 substrate cosmology with empirical astrobiology. To do that, you need a macro vision. You need an understanding of production, flow, and complex systems architecture.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, his background actually suggests this deep obsession with how information travels from a point of origin to a localized destination.
Okay, let's unpack this cosmic supply chain then, because we need systems thinker, since we are essentially talking about the ultimate multiversal Amazon fulfillment pipeline.
That's a good way to put it.
And if we're tracing a supply chain, you have to start at the manufacturer. First, you need the materials, right?
Right, the origin point.
And in Sewell's timeline, the absolute beginning of this process is what he calls the first rift event. Now, I'm assuming this isn't just a fancy rebranding of the Big Bang.
No, no, the distinction is critical. We typically view the Big Bang as a singular, localized expansion event, like a balloon inflating, right?
Yeah, it happens once and then everything spreads out.
Exactly. But the first rift event in Sewell's framework is modeled not as a static beginning, but as a dynamic, ongoing catalyst. It represents a continuous multiversal intersection.
Continue, so it's still happening.
Yes. Think of it as a point of ongoing kinetic friction between realities. And that friction generates an immense, continuous injection of energy into the system.
Okay, and that massive energy injection creates the rift forges. But what physically is a rift forge? Because when I hear the word forge, I picture heat and pressure, like raw metal being pounded into shape.
Sure, blacksmith imagery.
Yeah, so in a cosmological sense, are we talking about like the core of a star?
It is actually far more foundational than a stellar core. A rift forge is a localized, non-baryonic environment generated in the immediate wake of that first rift event.
Non-baryonic, so not made of normal matter.
Right. And what makes the forge essential is its thermodynamic properties. It is a region of incredibly low entropy within the multiverse.
Low entropy. I thought the universe naturally moves toward high entropy. Chaos.
It does. But within the forge, the energetic gradients are so specific and so intense that they essentially force complex molecular structures into existence.
So it's an environment that actively opposes the natural tendency of things to just fall into disorder.
Precisely. For example, if you consider the chirality of biological molecules,
Like chirality? Remind me what that is.
it's the handedness of molecules, the fact that all life on Earth exclusively uses left-handed amino acids and right-handed sugars.
Oh, right, right. It's a very specific orientation.
Exactly. And achieving that uniformity is incredibly difficult by random chance in a chaotic void.
Hmm.
The Rift Forge provides the structured crucible required.
It stamps them out.
Yes. The multiversal energies present in the forge don't just mash atoms together blindly. They synthesize these highly complex chiral prebiotic precursors. It's the manufacturing floor where the exact chemical patterns required for biological life are assembled.
Wow. Okay, so the complex prebiotic precursors are synthesized, the cargo is manufactured, but a factory doesn't do you any good if the product never leaves the loading dock.
Right, you have to ship it.
Yeah, and you have this incredibly delicate chemical cargo sitting inside an intense high-energy rift forge. How does it not just burn up? I mean, how does it actually escape the forge's gravity well or energetic pull to begin its transit?
So that transition is managed by what Sewell defines as rift bursts.
All these bursts.
Yeah, these are periodic, massive, energetic expulsions that eject the synthesized material out of the forge. But, and this is key, they don't just blast the material raw out into the void. The ejection process encapsulates the ingredients into Courier-Bodies.
Now, here's where my skepticism flares up again.
I figured it might.
Because traditional astrobiology gives us panspermia, right? The idea that life's ingredients travel on comets or asteroids. You get a lucky space rock that happens to have some water and amino acids, and it crashes into a planet.
The standard model, yeah.
So how are Sewell's Courier-Bodies any different from just a lucky meteor? I initially pictured like an insulated delivery truck, but that implies something artificial.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to move away from the truck analogy. Because a truck implies a manufactured solid-state vehicle. A better way to conceptualize a Courier body is to think of a biological cell membrane.
Oh, no.
Or a self-sustaining magnetic containment field. It is naturally occurring, but mathematically distinct from random debris like a comet.
How so?
Well, a comet is passive, right? It is at the mercy of whatever it hits. It's just a rock. But Sewell's framework elevates this to a structured multiversal interaction system. A Courier body is an active, structurally resilient topological pocket.
Active meaning it's doing something to protect the cargo.
Exactly. It maintains a specific internal thermodynamic equilibrium. It actively protects the fragile chiral precursors it carries from the external environment during transit.
So it's dynamically preserving the cargo. It's not just a rock with some ice on it. It's a legitimate active containment system.
Yes, very much so.
And it needs that containment system because of where it's traveling. Because Sewell doesn't just say these Courier-Bodies fly through empty space, right? He says they navigate the SH1 substrate.
Correct.
What exactly is the physics of the SH1 substrate? Because usually when I hear substrate, I think of like the dirt in terrarium.
Yeah.
Or the silicon wafer a microchip is built on.
Well, the microchip wafer is actually a really solid analogy, but you have to apply it to multiversal topology. The SH1 substrate is the foundational non-baryonic medium of the multiverse.
So it's what everything rests on.
Right. It is not an empty vacuum. It has properties, it has resistance, and it has topological currents.
Topological currents, like rivers in the multiverse.
Kind of, yeah.
Hmm.
If the Courier-Bodies were just blasted into a pure vacuum, they might wander infinitely. But the SH1 substrate provides the underlying fabric, the specific channels through which these containment fields travel.
So the Courier body is specifically interacting with the physics of the SH1 substrate to propel itself.
It's more about topological resonance. The Courier body is maintaining its internal equilibrium against the friction of the SH1 substrate. This is a highly formalizable transit.
Meaning it's predictable.
Exactly. It's the systematic movement of complex biological information across a multiversal medium, and it relies on the substrate's currents to direct the cargo toward localized realities.
Okay, so let's trace the logistics so far.
Let's do it.
The first rift event provides the energy. The rift forge synthesizes the complex chiral precursors. Then a rift burst ejects them, encapsulating them inside the dynamic containment field of a Courier body.
Right.
And that Courier body rides the topological currents of the SH1 substrate. But eventually, the transit has to end. The cargo actually has to be delivered.
So it has to arrive, yes.
And in Sewell's framework, the destination is a boundary layer world. Now, we assume Earth is one of these boundary layer worlds.
Yeah.
But early Earth, during the Hadean Eon, was an absolute nightmare. I mean, we're talking about oceans of magma, extreme radiation, constant meteorite bombardments. It's like leaving a delicate package on a totally hostile front porch.
Very hostile.
If this delicate multiversal topological pocket just crashes into a magma ocean, doesn't the containment field just break? Doesn't the complex chemistry just instantly vaporize? How does Sewell resolve the actual drop-off?
You've identified the most critical bottleneck in literally any theory of panspermia. Arriving is easy. Surviving the arrival is the real challenge.
Right.
If the Courier body merely physically impacted the planet like a meteor, the localized entropy of a forming world would utterly destroy the prebiotic information. It would be gone.
So how does it survive?
This is where Sewell introduces the mechanics of terrestrial pattern stabilization.
Pattern stabilization. So it's not a physical landing. What is it?
It is a process of thermodynamic anchoring. It is not enough for the multiversal material to simply exist in the terrestrial atmosphere. It actually has to integrate. Sewell argues that boundary layer worlds like Earth possess highly specific geochemical conditions that allow for stabilization loops.
Oh, okay. When you say stabilization loops, are we talking about chemical feedback loops?
Yeah.
Like an autocatalytic set?
That is a very apt comparison, actually, yes.
Yeah.
When the Courier body interacts with the boundary layer of the planet, it doesn't just crash. The containment field essentially opens, and the complex molecular instructions, the pattern of life forged back in the rift forge, begin to map onto the local terrestrial chemistry.
Whoa. So the multiversal ingredients force the chaotic local chemistry of early Earth into a new thermodynamic equilibrium.
Yes. The incoming material initiates autocatalytic feedback loops that catch and anchor the biological information. The stabilization loop shifts the local environment's entropy just enough to allow those fragile chiral precursors to replicate and stabilize into an empirical, localized biological reality. And a boundary layer world is explicitly defined by its capacity to execute these loops. If the planet can't support the loop, the pattern degrades, the information is lost to entropy, and the delivery fails.
Okay, this is where my brain starts flashing warning signs again.
Uh-oh. Why is that?
Because conceptually, tracing this multiversal supply chain from a rift forge down to an autocatalytic chemical loop on early Earth is stunning. It's elegant.
It is.
But going back to that initial tension I mentioned at the top of the deep dive, you can't just publish an elegant logistical narrative on Zenodo and call it theoretical physics. You need mathematical proof that these mechanisms can actually interact.
You need the math, absolutely.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the paper leans heavily on something called the EchoRift XL Sovereign Diagnostic and uses a category theory diagram.
Yes, the math is heavy.
Now, I have a layman's grasp of, say, quantum mechanics, but category theory is a completely different beast. Why is a branch of highly abstract mathematics the right tool to prove a cosmological biological supply chain?
Well, category theory is demanding, and mathematicians themselves sometimes jokingly refer to it as generalized abstract nonsense.
Really?
Yeah, because it operates at such an incredibly high level of abstraction. But it is fundamentally the mathematics of mapping complex relationships across entirely different structures.
Okay.
Standard physics equations are great for measuring, say, the gravity of a star or the velocity of a particle. But Sewell isn't measuring velocity. He is measuring the preservation of structural information across completely different multiversal states.
I think I see. So if a standard physics equation is like measuring the exact distance and speed of a train, is category theory more like a subway map? Like it
Mhm.
just shows you that the red line connects to the blue line at a specific station.
A subway map gets you halfway there. But
It's,
unlike a simple transit map, category theory also accounts for the mathematical transformation of the passengers during the ride.
oh, wow.
It maps the topology of the entire system. In category theory, you have objects and the morphisms or functors that connect and transform them.
Okay, so applying that to the EchoRift XL diagnostic, the objects would be the different logistical stages we talked about.
Hmm.
The Rift Forge, the SH1 substrate, the boundary layer world.
Exactly. You've got it.
Yeah.
And the morphisms are the physical processes of transition. So the rift bursts, ejecting the material, the thermodynamic maintenance of the Courier-Bodies in transit, and those crucial terrestrial stabilization loops.
Okay, I think I see the value here. Because the category theory diagram isn't just an illustration in the paper, it's a structural proof.
Right. It's Sewell showing his work. He is mathematically demonstrating that the biological information created in the Rift Forge isn't lost or mathematically contradicted when it translates through the SH1 substrate and anchors into terrestrial chemistry.
It proves the logic holds up.
Exactly. It resolves the contradiction of cross-universal energy conservation. By mapping the functors from the topology of the SH1 substrate directly into the mathematical space of terrestrial chemistry, the EchoRift XL diagnostic proves that this multiversal supply chain is logically consistent.
It's mathematically possible.
Yes. The math proves that the prebiotic information can actually survive the transit. The blueprint functions as an unbroken system, from the ultimate origin point all the way down to a stabilized replicating cell on Earth.
Which profoundly shifts how we view our own existence, really. So, what does this all mean for us?
It changes everything about our context.
Yeah, because we've covered an immense amount of ground today. We started at the first Rift event, where dynamic multiversal friction creates the ultimate energy source. Then we explored how the low-entropy rift forges synthesize fragile chiral precursors of life.
Right.
And we mapped how rift bursts encapsulate those precursors into Courier-Bodies, these dynamic topological containment fields, which then navigate the non-baryonic currents of the SH1 substrate.
The delivery trucks that aren't trucks.
Right. And finally, we look at how those Courier-Bodies don't just crash into early Earth, but interact with our boundary layer world through complex thermodynamic stabilization loops, which allows multiversal information to anchor into local biology. All of it rigorously proven through the mathematical mapping of category theory.
And that is a vital contribution to astrobiology, precisely because it forces us to look beyond our immediate cosmic neighborhood.
It zooms way out.
Yeah, Dr. Sewell's framework requires us to stop viewing the origin of life on Earth as an isolated accident. It's not just a statistical anomaly in a dead universe. Instead, it frames biological life as the successful execution of a deeply connected, formalized, multiversal logistics network.
We aren't just a random spark in the dark.
Yeah,
We are the final step in a mathematically sound delivery route.
beautifully put.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to consider as you go about your day. If life on Earth is the result of this highly structured cosmic supply chain, and our existence relies on the specific geochemical conditions of our planet catching and stabilizing those multiversal deliveries, what does that imply about the scope of the system?
That's the big question.
Because if the first rift event is continuous, and the rift forges are constantly manufacturing these biological patterns, sending them out across the topological currents of the SH1 substrate, then we are just one stop on an infinite route. What kind of biological cargo is arriving on the shores of other boundary layer worlds right now across the cosmos?
It really makes you wonder.
Something to keep in mind the next time you look up at the night sky. Keep diving deep.